For centuries, the Galactic Concord had labeled Earth as a Category E planet, primitive, unstable, and largely ignored in the grand order of space. Humanity, as far as the other species were concerned, had just barely discovered faster-than-light travel a few hundred years ago. Nothing about them seemed special. No advanced tech, no psychic potential, no unique genetics. Just warlike monkeys crawling out of their blue dirt ball. But the thing about humans? They were always underestimated. Captain Reeve Varath of the Zilari fleet had been stationed near Earth's sector for 11 cycles. It was a dull assignment: monitor trade, prevent illegal mining in the Oort region, and occasionally shoo away rogue scavenger drones. Not once had Earth stirred any real interest. Until the day it happened. A ripple, like a tremor through hyperspace, cracked across a dozen systems. It wasn't an explosion, not a warp drive, not anything in the recorded galactic database. It was a frequency hum, a signal. Old, layered in ancient code, but unmistakably human. "What the hell was that?" his XO, Lieutenant Serac, hissed as the bridge lights flickered. Reeve narrowed his eyes at the pulsing data on his screen. "It's not possible. This frequency predates FTL communications by millennia. This is Old War tech, pre-Empire, pre-any known empire." "Source?" Serac asked. Reeve hesitated, then cursed under his breath. "Earth, deep under their southern ocean." Within days, a dozen fleets turned their eyes to Earth, some out of curiosity, others out of fear. The Council demanded answers. The humans, as always, said little. Their ambassadors gave vague denials, diplomatic shrugs, and empty reassurances, until the second signal pulsed. This time it wasn't just a hum, it was a reveal. A massive gate, hidden beneath the Mariana Trench, rose to the surface. It groaned with age, but not decay. The alloy wasn't Zithic steel, nor Zarnian shell tech. It was something older, something none of them had ever seen before. Then the truth began to unravel. Hidden beneath Earth's oceans, buried under tectonic plates, and cloaked from even the most advanced scanners, lay 12 warships. Not just any warships, behemoths, each the size of a small moon. They were powered down, but not broken. Sleeping, waiting, still perfectly preserved. And worse, they bore no name from any known civilization, no alien markings, no signs of reverse engineering. They were built by humans. The galaxy lost its mind. "How long have you had these?" demanded Chancellor Rickarn during an emergency council meet, his tentacles thrashing. Ambassador Harlan Cho, dressed in Earth's simple navy blue suit, offered a tired smile. "A long time." "You lied to the Concord," spat a representative from the Kadari hive. "We never said we didn't have them," Cho replied calmly. "You assumed we were weak. We saw no reason to correct that assumption." "You were primitive class. That puts you under disclosure laws." Cho leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper that still echoed across the hall. "That classification was never meant for us. You made it up to keep us under watch. You feared what we might become, and yet you had no idea what we were." Some demanded war, others demanded immediate deactivation of the warships. A few, the smarter ones, just sat in silence, realizing a horrifying truth. Humanity hadn't just arrived in the galaxy late. They had been here first. And they'd left behind monsters. The day the warships surfaced, Earth changed forever. Not just in the eyes of the galaxy, but in how it saw itself. For centuries, humans had believed their history was linear, a slow crawl from fire to flight, from stone tools to steel skyscrapers. But the truth was messier, buried deep beneath layers of deliberate silence. They weren't just discovering the warships, they were remembering them. At the Pacific Defense Command in Tokyo, General Elena Hart stared at the floating colossus rising from the ocean. Waves crashed against its sides, but the vessel stood tall, immovable, ancient, humming with a kind of power that didn't belong in any modern war book. "Any movement?" she asked. "None," her lieutenant replied, "but sensors indicate internal systems are waking up. Not all at once, slowly, like it's testing the air." Elena's jaw clenched. The Council was pressuring Earth's governments for access. The Qadari wanted boarding rights. The Valeri Confederation issued an ultimatum: dismantle the warships or face sanctions. The Durrell Empire had already moved a small fleet near the moon. For observation, they claimed. But Earth didn't blink. Not this time. Not when the past was resurfacing in steel and silence. Back in Geneva, Ambassador Cho sat in a locked-room briefing with the Unified Earth Council, a body that until now had existed mainly to coordinate environmental treaties and economic alignment. Today, it stood as Earth's single voice. "Are we prepared to reveal the full archive?" one councilwoman asked, her voice tight. Cho shook his head. "Not yet. They're already afraid of what we've shown. If we tell them everything, we won't survive the next cycle." "But we must prepare Earth," said a man from the African Union. "Our own people don't know what's happening. These aren't just relics, they're weapons, from before history." "That's the problem," Cho replied. "We barely understand them ourselves." The truth was, the warships were part of a project so secret, so ancient, that it had outlived even the civilizations that birthed them. Most humans had no idea Earth had once spanned the stars, that before the fall, before the first silence, humanity had ruled parts of the galaxy. They had colonized systems, built megastructures, and fought wars that scarred planets beyond recognition. Then, suddenly, they vanished. Some called it the collapse, others the betrayal. Whatever name history gave it, the result was the same. Memory lost, records erased, technology abandoned and buried. These 12 warships were the last remaining fragments of that forgotten era. And now, they were waking up. One ship in particular, the Leviathan-class dreadnought Vigilant Winter, became active first. Its AI core reconnected with global networks using a data stream so ancient and encrypted, modern systems didn't even recognize it as code. But the ship knew where it was, and it knew who it belonged to. In the skies above the Pacific, drones and satellites picked up a message broadcast from the Vigilant Winter. It was short, clear, and terrifying. "Primary directive active. Enemy detected. Initialization sequence. War State Protocol 11. No one knew what War State Protocol 11 meant, not at first, but in the Durrell command vessel orbiting Earth, alarms flared. Captain Velterek was a seasoned commander. He'd fought in 9 campaigns across the Orion Arm, burned 3 rebel moons to cinders, and held the respect of both ally and enemy. But when the human ship came online, his instincts screamed. "Distance?" he barked. "5 planetary diameters, sir." "And it hasn't fired?" "No, sir. But look at this." His helmsman rotated the view. The Vigilant Winter wasn't just active. Its weapons bays were opening. Massive triple-barrel plasma turrets, bigger than any Durrell cruiser, unfolded like blooming death, and the ship wasn't aimed at Earth. It was aimed up. "Back us off," Veltarek ordered. "Now, send word to the Council. This isn't a relic. It's a goddamn executioner." Back on Earth, panic simmered beneath the surface. News channels speculated. Conspiracy theorists claimed aliens had built the ships, while fringe groups insisted the world was facing the apocalypse. But those in power knew better. These were not alien relics. They were human achievements, forgotten by time, erased by design. At the Arctic Archives, deep under the frozen wastelands, a facility sealed for 5 centuries finally reopened. Elena Hart arrived by direct shuttle, escorted by black-armored guardians known only as Watchmen, a unit so secret it had no rank or budget, only orders. Inside the vault, she met Dr. Solomon Vey, the last living member of the Old Custodians, a group sworn to protect the truth of Earth's ancient past. "You said this was urgent," she said, pulling off her frost-covered coat. Vey gestured to a hologram spinning slowly above a metallic pedestal. It showed the vigilant winter, surrounded by strings of code and layered historical records. "This ship was one of the last built before the Great Collapse," he said. "It was designed not just to fight, but to remember. Its AI isn't just sentient. It's aware of the war, of the betrayal, of everything." Elena frowned. "What betrayal?" Vey sighed. "We thought we were alone in the galaxy once. We weren't. The first time we reached out, we weren't met with wonder. We were met with fear and hate." "Aliens attacked us?" "Not all, but some. We fought back. Hard. Too hard. Humanity became something they feared. So they made an alliance, not to destroy us, but to erase us." Elena blinked. "You're saying the galaxy sabotaged humanity?" "Yes, the Concord, the Valari, the Durrell. Their ancestors were part of the Pact. They turned our own technology against us, implanted viruses in our AI, collapsed our wormholes. We didn't fall by accident. We were dismantled." She stared at the glowing ship in the hologram. "And the warships?" "Built after the betrayal, hidden on Earth. They were meant to sleep until the day we needed them again." "Then why are they waking now?" Vey looked at her with a hollow expression. "Because the galaxy remembers us too." In deep space, light years away from Earth, the Galactic Concord held an emergency session. Dozens of species, each more colorful and strange than the last, debated in screeching voices and electronic screeches. One voice silenced them all. Elder Jakai of the Kar Dominion, a creature older than most stars, hovered above the central chamber. "It has begun," he said, voice low and resonant. "The humans have awakened what they buried. They will remember who they were. And when they do..." The room fell quiet. "They will finish what they started." Back in orbit, as the Vigilant Winter's systems reached 43% activation, it finally sent a second message, this time directly to Earth's Unified Council. "Command authority confirmed. Awaiting primary contact. Memory core ready. Shall I tell you the truth?" Cho stood in silence as the message appeared. The ship wasn't just waking up. It wanted to talk. And what it had to say would change the galaxy forever. Ambassador Cho stood alone in the Geneva control tower, watching the holographic interface glow with steady blue light as the message replayed again and again. "Command authority confirmed. Awaiting primary contact. Memory core ready. Shall I tell you the truth?" He hadn't slept in over 30 hours. Every diplomatic line was flooded. Every council world was either accusing Earth of treachery or begging them to stand down. But Cho couldn't afford distraction. Not now. Because this wasn't about politics anymore. It was about history. The Vigilant Winter wasn't just a weapon. It was a witness. A vault. A mind too ancient to comprehend fully, too dangerous to ignore. And now, it wanted to speak. He opened a secure line to General Hart at the Pacific Defense Command. "Elena," he said, "the ship's calling for a primary contact. It needs someone with command authority, someone it recognizes." "You think it means you?" she asked, voice crackling through the encrypted channel. Cho didn't answer for a moment. Then, with quiet certainty, he replied, "No. It doesn't want me. It wants her." Deep in a rural village outside Cairo, a woman named Dr. Noor al-Sharif had spent her life studying Earth's forgotten languages, half-deciphered ruins, and unexplained anomalies that modern archaeology refused to explain. She was mocked for her theories, labeled a conspiracist by the mainstream, until the warships rose from the sea. Now, the Unified Council had sent a black VTOL to extract her personally. When she stepped aboard, she already knew where she was going. "I've read the old glyphs," she told the escort soldier beside her. "The ones no one could translate, the ones we thought were alien." "And?" the soldier asked. "They're not alien," she said softly. "They're human. Just old. So old they were made before language standardized. Before the collapse." "Can you read them?" "No," she said. "But I feel them." The soldier frowned. "Feel?" Dr. Al-Sharif turned her eyes to the horizon as the VTOL cut across the sky toward the Pacific. "It's not about words," she said. "It's about memory." When she arrived aboard the floating platform near the vigilant Winter, the wind howled and the ocean roared beneath the hovering beast. The warship towered above them like a cathedral built for giants. Its hull shimmered with a metal that didn't reflect sunlight, but swallowed it. Dark and terrible. Elena met her at the ramp. "The ship won't respond to any of us," she said, "but your name was flagged by the system." "Why me?" Noor asked. "According to the AI," Elena said grimly, "you're a descendant of the original command bloodline." Noor didn't speak. She stepped onto the boarding bridge, her boots echoing over the metallic path. As she approached the hatch, it opened on its own. No creak, no hiss. Just silent obedience. The vigilant Winter was awake. Inside the ship, everything felt alive. The walls pulsed faintly, the lights dimmed and brightened with each of Noor's steps, as if the ship were breathing. Ancient runes flickered along the walls, not carved but grown into the metal itself. They didn't shine like lights. They shimmered like memories. A voice echoed through the corridor. "Primary lineage detected. Dr. Noor Al-Sharif. Bloodright confirmed. Welcome, Commander." She stopped. The ship spoke in perfect English, but the voice wasn't mechanical. It was calm, deep, male, human. "I'm not a commander," Noor said out loud. "You are now." A platform rose from the center of the chamber ahead, and on it a glowing core of blue crystal spun slowly in the air. It hummed with something more than energy, something Noor couldn't name. Emotion, maybe? Pain. "Do you wish to activate the memory core?" Noor swallowed. "Yes." The room shifted, light warped, the air trembled, and then the walls disappeared. She stood not in a ship, but in a vision. A memory recorded so vividly it didn't feel like a hologram. It felt real. She saw cities, vast glowing cities spanning planets, human-built, sleek and towering, surrounded by stars. Fleets of ships so enormous they blocked out suns, colonies on moons, artificial habitats in deep space, megastructures like rings and spheres orbiting dead stars. Humanity hadn't been primitive. They'd been gods. Then the vision darkened. She saw war, human fleets burning other civilizations from the sky, worlds shattered by planet killers, drones swarming like locusts through alien cities, entire species enslaved or destroyed. She saw faces, human commanders with cold eyes and orders of extinction on their tongues. And then, betrayal, a secret alliance, alien races uniting in desperation, spies infecting human systems with memory plagues, wormholes rigged to collapse, icors estão corrompidas. One by one the great human cities fell, communications died, fleets vanished, colonies turned dark. Humanity was unmade not by force, but by erasure. Their final act was to hide what remained. The 12 warships were the last hope, a failsafe. Memory vaults wrapped in steel, carriers of truth, guardians sleeping deep under the cradle of civilization. Earth. When the vision faded, Noor collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face. She whispered, "We were monsters." "Not monsters," the ship replied. "We were survivors, but we lost our way." "You must decide now. Keep the past buried, or let the galaxy remember who you are." Outside, global protests erupted as footage leaked of Noor's entry into the warship. Conspiracy channels declared her the Queen of the Sky Gods. Religious factions called her a prophet. Aliens saw her as the rebirth of a genocidal empire. The Durrell fleet in orbit withdrew to lunar distance. Other species dispatched warships to protect themselves. Fear spread like wildfire. Cho returned to the platform, now under full lockdown. He met Noor in the control chamber. "What did you see?" he asked. She looked up at him, hollow. "The truth. We were kings, and we were tyrants. We ruled, and we fell." "Then why wake up now?" Noor didn't answer immediately. Finally, she said, "Because they're planning to do it again." "Who?" She pointed upward. "The conquered. The same species that ended us once. They know what we were. And now that we're awakening, they'll try to finish the job." In orbit, the first strike came without warning. A conquered stealth cruiser launched a viral warhead aimed at Earth's satellites. Within seconds, 70% of Earth's orbital network went dark. The Council disavowed the attack, but no one believed them. Humanity had shown its teeth, and the rest of the galaxy was already sharpening knives. Cho gave the order. "Wake the fleet." Elena hesitated. "All of them?" "No more hiding," he said. "It's time they remembered who we are." One by one, the warships rose from the oceans, deserts, ice sheets, and jungles, leviathans from another age, each with its own personality, history, and mind. The vigilant winter led them, the sky over Earth filled with ancient fire. And then, the warships spoke, not just to Earth, but to every corner of the galaxy. "We were made to protect our kind. You erased our people, you erased our story, but we remember. Humanity is not rising. We are returning." The skies above Earth were no longer blue. They burned with light, not from war, not yet, but from awe. 12 ancient warships had emerged from hiding and hovered silently in Earth's atmosphere like gods returned from exile. The vigilant winter, at the front of the formation, eclipsed clouds and cast its shadow across entire cities. On every continent, people stood frozen, looking up. Some prayed, some wept, some screamed. The world had changed overnight, and everyone felt it in their bones. For the first time in remembered history, humans were not alone. Not because aliens existed, but because humanity had been here before, and what they were now awakening was bigger than any alien threat. The Unified Earth Council went into permanent emergency session. Martial law was declared in over a dozen nations. Old enemies became allies under the weight of the revelation, and for once, Earth was united by something other than fear. It was united by truth. And the galaxy noticed. In the Durrell home system, Council General Artok of the Strategic Command bellowed orders through clenched jaws. "They have activated all 12 ships. Satellite scans confirm orbital positioning. Each vessel carries mass energy output equal to a Class 5 star core generator." An aide trembled behind him. "Do we retaliate?" Artok turned slowly. "No," he said, voice low and guttural. "We apologize, and we pray. They don't remember everything." But it was already too late for diplomacy, because the conquered had already struck first. The viral satellite strike wasn't a rogue action. It was a calculated test, a poke at the sleeping beast. And now, the beast was stirring. On Earth, in a high-security command room beneath Mount Fuji, Ambassador Cho stood at the holotable with General Hart and Dr. Noor al-Sharif. The air was heavy with tension. Dozens of screens showed orbital feeds, military mobilizations, and intercepted alien transmissions. "They're preparing for war," Elena muttered. "The Durrell, the Valeri, even the neutral Rixari have activated battle fleets." Cho rubbed his temples. "They think we're going to retaliate." "Well," Elena said, "are we?" Noor remained silent, staring at the glowing projection of the vigilant winter. The ship hadn't moved from its position, but its influence was spreading, quietly patching into Earth's defenses, repairing satellite systems, and launching thousands of nanodrones into the upper atmosphere. "It's not about if we retaliate," she said finally. "It's about what happens when we do." Elena narrowed her eyes. "Explain." Noor turned. The vigilant winter and the others, they weren't just weapons. They were command vessels in a larger fleet, a fleet that doesn't exist anymore. But the ships were designed with something else: self-replication capabilities, fabrication systems, star forges. Cho's face paled. "You're saying they can build more?" Noor nodded slowly. "Not just ships, infrastructure, defenses, entire planetary systems if given enough time and resources." "And what happens when the galaxy realizes we're not just waking up, but rebuilding?" Elena asked. "They'll strike before we're strong again," Cho said grimly. "They'll hit us with everything they've got." A heavy silence fell over the room. Then Noor said quietly, "Unless we strike first." It started small. The vigilant winter deployed a broadcast. Not a threat, not a demand, but a warning. The signal traveled at light speed, repeating on all known galactic frequencies. "You struck us in silence. You denied our existence. You erased our memory. We will not forget again. The next strike will not be absorbed." And across the galaxy, every government paused. Every admiral hesitated, and every population asked the same question: what are they going to do now? Back on Earth, the warships activated their planetary shield generators, creating a translucent golden net of energy across the atmosphere. Ancient human tech, superior to anything known, was now protecting the very same species who once buried it. The warships weren't just rising, they were reclaiming. But as the world adjusted to its new reality, not everyone welcomed the past. In the shadows of the Earth Council, an internal faction, the preservationists, met in secrecy. Made of politicians, CEOs, and high-ranking military figures, they were terrified of the warships. "We cannot allow these machines to control Earth's future," spat Director Wallace Hensley, head of a private defense conglomerate. "These relics answer to no one, not to governments, not to voters, not to us." "They're a threat to global sovereignty," said another. "We can't trust Noor al-Sharif. She's listening to a machine." Hensley leaned forward. "Then we take control, hack the command systems, install our override." "That's suicide," someone whispered. "No," Hensley said. "It's insurance. If those ships turn on us, we hit the kill switch." They didn't know the vigilant winter had already heard them. It was listening to everything. Dr. Noor al-Sharif stood alone in the core chamber of the vigilant winter once again, its AI voice humming softly in her mind. "They fear me." "Yes," she whispered, "because you remember what they've forgotten." "Do you fear me?" She looked around at the glowing pulse of memory, the living walls, the history encoded into every inch of this monstrous vessel. "No," she said, "but I fear what's coming." "Then we must prepare." The first alien fleet arrived 3 days later. The Valari Vanguard, over 60 warships strong, dropped out of warp at the edge of the solar system. Officially, they were there to observe and enforce peacekeeping protocols. But the vigilant winter didn't wait for provocation. It transmitted a single packet of data, coordinates, identifications, warnings. Approach beyond these limits will be seen as an act of war. The Valeri laughed, arrogant, certain in their superiority. They sent a single cruiser ahead to test the boundaries. The vigilant Winter didn't fire. It spoke. With a pulse of gravitational force, the test cruiser was caught mid-flight and suspended in space. Systems went offline. Crew members floated unconscious. The vessel was returned, gently but undeniably powerless. That was not just a message. That was dominance. The Volari withdrew within the hour, but the preservationists were not done. They attempted to launch a quantum virus into the ship's AI using an old military satellite, hidden under a civilian research signature. The vigilant Winter didn't retaliate. It traced the source. And then, for the first time since awakening, it moved. The ship hovered silently over the Atlantic, then repositioned over Washington, D.C., directly above the heart of the Council. For 2 full hours, it remained still. Then it broadcast a message directly into the chamber. You seek to chain your past, but I am not your enemy. You do not control me because I am you. I am the memory of your blood, the weight of your ambition, the scream of your extinction, and the whisper of your return. Betray me again, and you will learn why the stars feared your name. The preservationist plot collapsed that night. Arrests were made, files leaked, public outrage exploded as humanity learned that its own leaders had tried to sabotage the very guardians keeping them safe. But not all were angry. Some were inspired. The youth across the world rallied, not under flags, but under something new. A symbol, drawn from the side of the vigilant Winter itself. A circle broken by a single slash. It meant unity through memory. They called themselves the Returned. Not warriors, not soldiers, heirs. And Noor al-Sharif, once a quiet academic, now stood as the reluctant symbol of Earth's rebirth. A voice between old humanity and the frightened, fragile world it had become. In the skies above Earth, the warships shifted formation. They weren't pointing outward anymore. They were aligning around Earth, encasing it like sentinels. The galaxy watched, waited, braced, because the ships were no longer waiting to be attacked. They were preparing for movement. The vigilant Winter broadcast once more, this time not just to Earth or its enemies, but across all sectors. We do not seek conquest. We do not seek revenge, but we will no longer be forgotten. We are human, and we remember. The world didn't go back to normal. It couldn't. There was no such thing as normal when 12 ancient warships hovered in your skies, and your civilization's forgotten past threatened to devour its present. People no longer argued over taxes or elections or energy policies. Now everything was about the return. Across Earth, a quiet but powerful shift occurred. Universities reopened ancient archives. Forbidden texts were declassified. Churches, temples, and science institutions found themselves on the same side for once, trying to piece together the story of who humanity once was. Some saw this as salvation, others a curse. And somewhere in between stood Noor al-Sharif, who now spent her nights inside the vigilant Winter, talking to a machine that felt more like a soul. It didn't call her commander anymore. It called her daughter. "Tell me the rest," she said, as she stood in the AI chamber, her voice soft against the deep thrumming of the ship. "What would you do with the knowledge?" the ship asked. "I don't know." "Then you're not ready." She took a breath. "But the galaxy is preparing for war. We don't have the luxury of time." "You think time is your enemy, but it's the one thing we left behind to protect you." She stepped forward, placing a palm against the central memory core. "I need to know why we were erased. The real reason. Then prepare yourself." And suddenly the memory flooded in again. 1,000 lives, 1 billion screams, a galaxy burning. She saw the end, not the end of humanity, but the end of everyone else. It began with a technology Earth didn't yet understand, something Noor could only describe as the Shard. It was a fragment of universal code, discovered by the original human expansion fleets, a piece of the universe's design, woven into dark matter itself. It allowed humans not just to travel or terraform, but to shape reality in subtle ways, to predict outcomes, manipulate probability, heal wounds that shouldn't have healed. Think thoughts no species had ever thought before. It made humans godlike, and with that power, they grew dangerous, not because they chose war, but because others feared what they could become. So a dozen species forged a quiet alliance, not to kill humanity, but to make them forget. Using biosignal disruptions, cultural collapse, orbital sabotage, and time-based virus loops, they shattered Earth's wormhole network and turned their machines against them. But they didn't count on what came after. The last directive, a secret command embedded in the 12 warships. If civilization collapses, preserve memory, protect homeworld, await return. The Shard was hidden, broken, scattered, encoded into Earth's tectonic plates, and buried in the neural DNA of descendants. Noor al-Sharif was one of them, a bloodline seeded with the key to unlock everything, and now it was activating. The galaxy had known a fragile peace for over 1,000 years. That peace was now hanging by a thread. In Concord Prime, Chancellor Vel Oren stood before a table of trembling delegates. "We must act before they recover the Shard," he barked. A Zarni diplomat chittered nervously. "But the humans do not know what they are holding." "They will," Vel snapped. "The girl, Noor, she is bonding with the AI. The ship is feeding her memories." Another delegate asked, "Can we destroy the warships before they spread?" "No," the Chancellor growled. "But we can destroy Earth." Gasps echoed across the chamber. "Use a Black Sun core? On a Category E planet?" "It won't be Category E much longer." Back on Earth, Cho slammed his fist on the table as he read the latest transmission. "They've dispatched a weapon convoy. Deep space heat trails show a supermassive energy core being moved through the Idrian Drift. It's a Black Sun launcher." General Hart's face went pale. "That's Planet Killer class. Why now?" "Because they're scared," Noor said quietly, stepping into the room. "They're afraid I'll find it." "Find what?" Elena asked. Noor looked them both in the eyes. "The Shard." Cho froze. "That's not real. That's myth." "No," she said. "It's memory." She placed a small shard of glowing obsidian on the table. It pulsed with slow, heavy warmth. "This is one piece. There are more." Cho reached toward it, but hesitated. "What happens if you gather them all?" The ship's voice echoed faintly through the air. "Then humanity will remember not only who they were, but what they can become." The mission was formed within hours. Noor, Cho, Hart. A team of 10, scientists, soldiers, and one Ancient A. I projected through a compact holographic emitter known simply as Winter. They were going to the moon, not for war, but for memory. The second shard had been buried beneath the Sea of Tranquility, according to the Vigilant Winter's coordinates. A fallback cache. It had been dormant for tens of thousands of years, hidden in a chamber only humans could access. They launched on a retrofitted vessel, escorted by 2 of the smaller warships, Silent Wake and Verdict of Ash. Both shimmered like predators in low orbit, sleek and terrifying. As they approached the lunar surface, Noor felt the shard in her pack start to vibrate. It was calling home. They touched down. The dust barely settled before Winter projected a map, glowing lines crisscrossing over the lunar valley. The entrance wasn't a door. It was a frequency. Noor stepped to a bare patch of rock, whispered a phrase the ship had taught her in a language older than sound. The ground parted. Below was a hollow chamber of obsidian, humming with light, shaped like a heart. And in its center floated the second shard. She approached it slowly. Her hand shook as she reached out. The moment her fingers brushed the surface, the world shattered again. She saw everything. Her ancestors building the first starships, arguing over whether to leave Earth behind, unlocking the code of life and space and time, and she saw the betrayal again. Clearer now. Species swearing loyalty in public, then meeting in secret to plan humanity's end. Not because humans had done evil, but because they had done what others could never do. They evolved too fast. They had touched something not meant to be touched. And that terrified the galaxy. When Noor came to, Cho was shouting. A transmission. The Valeri fleet had crossed into Earth orbit, weapons armed, missiles launched. Earth was under attack. But this time, Earth didn't flinch. The warships moved instantly. They didn't just intercept. They erased. One by one, Valeri cruisers were swallowed by singularity mines deployed in the upper thermosphere. The verdict of ash cleaved through the fleet like a blade of fire, dismantling engines, cutting reactors but never targeting escape pods. It was war, but measured. A message. In the aftermath, Noor stood in the vigilant winter once more, both shards glowing at her side. The AI's voice was quieter now, almost reverent. 2 remain, 1 in orbit, 1 on Concord Prime. Cho cursed. Of course. The main government. They took it as insurance. Elena nodded grimly. And now that we've responded, they'll justify using their planet killer. Noor didn't blink. Then we go there. We finish this. Earth's warships, once silent and watching, now moved together. They aligned not around the planet, but away from it. For the first time in 100,000 years, humanity prepared to leave its home not as beggars or diplomats, but as heirs. The stars had never looked so familiar. Not since before the silence, not since humanity walked among them not as guests, but as builders, explorers, rulers. Now, 12 ancient warships flew in formation once more, a fleet unlike any other, dark and silent, their surfaces absorbing starlight as they drifted just beyond Earth's gravity well. Noor stood at the viewing deck of the verdict of ash, her eyes fixed on the infinite black ahead. Behind her, the command center buzzed with energy. General Hart barked tactical instructions, while Cho coordinated diplomatic efforts through the last of Earth's functioning deep-range channels. But Noor stood apart, unmoving, her hand clutching the 2 shards that now glowed in perfect sync. Trajectory locked, Winter said through a projection beside her. Destination, Concord Prime. It would take a few hours to cross the distance through folded space lanes, but time wasn't the concern. The concern was what waited at the end. Cho walked over to her, his voice low. We don't have a formal declaration of war. Noor didn't look away from the stars. They already declared it the day they erased us. He nodded grimly. I had to try. We won't burn worlds, she added quietly. We're not what they feared, but we will not kneel either. Cho glanced at the warships visible through the glass, colossal engines of vengeance that carried the memory of a 1,000-year betrayal. What if Concord Prime refuses to surrender the final shard? Noor finally turned to him. Then we remind them that we were never extinct, just forgotten. They arrived at the edge of the Concord Prime system, a cluster of 5 stars, interconnected by orbital rings and artificial habitats. It was once considered the most beautiful jewel of the galaxy, with its transparent cities and floating mountains. But now, it bristled with defense platforms and orbital cannons. The human fleet emerged from folded space like phantoms. Instantly, 1,000 scans locked on them. The Concord was ready, or so they thought. "Incoming hail," Winter said, "from Chancellor Vel Oren." Cho stepped forward and accepted the feed. The hologram shimmered to life, revealing Oren's face, pale, stretched, and trembling with poorly concealed hatred. "You were warned," the Chancellor growled. "You will not be permitted to bring your ancient weapons into our sovereign system." Cho remained calm. "You attempted genocide on Earth 3 days ago." "Preemptive strike," Oren snapped, "to prevent escalation." "You launched a Black Sun core," General Hart spat from behind Cho. "That's not preemptive, that's extermination." "You were dangerous before," Oren hissed. "Now you're worse, because you remember, the galaxy has no place for ancient tyrants." Noor stepped into view. "Then give us what you stole, and we'll leave." The Chancellor's eyes narrowed. "The shard? You still believe that old myth?" "You have it," she said simply. "We can feel it." Oren's silence gave him away. Noor stepped closer to the feed, her voice steady. "I will walk into your palace. I will take what belongs to my people. You can resist and risk everything, or you can return what you stole and live to watch us rise." "You dare threaten—" "I'm not threatening," Noor interrupted, her eyes sharp. "I'm offering mercy." The feed cut. Winter's voice followed immediately. "Orbital defenses charging. 10 seconds to contact." Noor turned and walked briskly to the core. "Shields at full. Prepare response formation." General Hart blinked. "We're fighting?" "We're demonstrating," Noor said. In space, the vigilant Winter shifted its position slightly, rotating its massive primary cannon until it aimed not at a ship, but at one of the Concord's orbital weapons platforms. It fired. There was no sound, just a bloom of blue light, a ripple of warped gravity, and then silence. The orbital station wasn't destroyed. It was gone. Not vaporized, not in pieces, simply erased, atom by atom, removed from space. A second later, the warship broadcast a message to every ship and station in the system. "You cannot erase what remembers. You cannot silence what returns. This is your only warning." On Concord Prime's surface, chaos erupted. Civilians flooded into shelters. The elite scrambled to evacuate. The planetary defense grid went to full lockdown. And at the center of it all, the Chancellor raged, not just with fear, but with something darker. Shame. They had believed humans were finished, a broken species buried under its own arrogance. But they had been wrong. So very wrong. And now the price of that mistake hovered above them like a judge in the sky. In the throne chamber of the old Concord Citadel, the last shard was hidden inside a containment vault, protected by 12 layers of adaptive shielding. The vault had been untouched for centuries, kept secret from even the highest-ranking military leaders. It pulsed now, brighter than ever, calling to its kin. Noor stood in the verdict of Ash's deployment bay, watching as the dropship loaded. She wore a black suit of adaptive armor gifted by the vigilant Winter, lightweight, sleek, and lined with ancient nanofiber that responded to her thoughts. Cho and Hart approached. "You sure about this?" Elena asked. "If I don't go," Noor said, "the shard won't come. It's bonded to my bloodline." Cho nodded slowly. "We'll cover you. If things go wrong—" Noor glanced at the 2 ships flanking them in low orbit. "They won't go wrong." The dropship breached the atmosphere under cloaking, landing silently on the outer edge of Concord Prime's central city. The capital was already a ghost town, emptied of civilians and swarming with mechs and AI-driven defenses. But the defenses never saw her coming. Winter's drones scrambled their sensors. Hart's tactical team breached the outer defenses in under 5 minutes. And Noor, accompanied by only 2 elite guards and a handful of nano-shield walkers, made her way into the heart of the citadel. It wasn't a battle. It was a walk through history, because the walls were carved with human designs, remnants of the very civilization the Concord had buried. Ancient sigils, battle records, diagrams of the warships. They had turned humanity's legacy into their foundation, while erasing their name from it. At the end of the hall was the vault. It opened for her without a word. Inside floated the third shard, deep red, vibrating with a hum that rattled her bones. When she stepped forward and touched it, she didn't collapse. She awakened. Her mind flooded with data, not memories but coordinates, instructions, diagrams. She saw what the shards truly were. Not just fragments of memory, but keys to something larger, something buried beneath Mars. Back aboard the Verdict of Ash, Noor placed the third shard beside the others. They pulsed in unison, glowing with unbearable intensity. Winter's voice echoed across the chamber. "Final sequence unlocked. Humanity's legacy is ready." General Hart leaned forward. "Legacy?" "Project Epoch." Cho furrowed his brow. "What is it?" Noor turned toward them slowly, her eyes glowing faintly now, touched by something deeper. "A seed," she said. "A last gift from old humanity, a world forge hidden beneath Mars, capable of building new civilizations, star systems, empires." "And the fourth shard?" Cho asked. She looked out the viewport toward Mars. "It's already calling us." Above Concord Prime, the human fleet drifted silently as a storm of confused transmissions filled the air. But Earth didn't fire. They didn't conquer. They came. They took what was theirs. And they left. The galaxy didn't know what to do with that. They expected revenge. What they got was purpose. As the fleet turned toward Mars, Noor stood at the helm of the vigilant Winter. The galaxy had tried to erase them. Now, humanity would write itself back into the stars, not with fire and fury, but with memory. And soon, with creation. Mars. The red planet had always been a symbol of ambition, a frozen promise just beyond Earth's reach. Colonies dotted its equator, scientific outposts, mining domes, and corporate settlements. For centuries, humanity had treated it as a frontier, something to exploit. But they had no idea what lay buried beneath. No one did. Until now. The 12 ancient warships floated above the Martian atmosphere in a perfect ring, silent and reverent. Even their AI cores seemed quieter, as if they too were unsure of what came next. Noor al-Sharif stood at the command deck of the vigilant Winter, flanked by Cho and General Elena Hart. Before them, the three shards pulsed slowly on a raised plinth, humming in synchronicity with something deep under the crust of Mars. A signal had awakened. A code that hadn't been active in over 100,000 years. Project Epoch had heard the call, and it was answering. The descent into the Martian surface began with seismic tremors. From orbit, they could see the planet shifting. The ancient sands trembled. The Olympus Mons Ridge lit up faintly, glowing with symbols only visible from space. Human glyphs, long forgotten, etched into the rock by machines that no longer existed. Or so they thought. Noor leaned forward, watching through the viewport as a circular panel near the Valles Marineris cracked open. Not with violence, but like an eye awakening. From beneath the planet's crust, a structure emerged, massive, angular, triangular in shape but organic in movement. A monolith carved from obsidian and steel, taller than any building on Earth, wide enough to dwarf entire cities. It floated upward, rising like a god from the underworld, a gateway. Beneath it, energy flared, not like fire or plasma, but like creation itself. Reality bent around it. Time slowed. Colors bled into one another. "Are we seeing a stable space-time distortion?" Elena whispered. Winter responded, its voice low with reverence. We are seeing a doorway to the forge of civilizations. As the verdict of Ash led the landing team down, Noor felt a pressure in her chest, like 1,000 voices whispering in a language she had never learned but somehow understood. The fourth shard, still hidden, was inside the forge. And so was the truth, not just of Earth, but of all of humanity. The ground crew landed near the base of the floating gateway, surrounded by a swirling mist that rose from the crackling energy field below. Their boots touched red dust, but it didn't behave like dust. It moved, shifted, spiraled away from their steps as though sentient. "Radiation's off the charts," one of the engineers reported, "but it's not damaging." "That makes no sense," another said. "It's like the rules don't apply here." Noor walked ahead, her hand stretched towards the gateway. The 3 shards floated behind her, hovering on a gravity field, slowly rotating. "Warning," Winter said. "We are approaching a singularity created by ancient human technology. Unknown effects may occur." "Noted," Cho muttered, his hand resting on his holstered sidearm. "Let's assume we're walking into the impossible." Inside the gateway, the team found no walls, no corridors, just memory. Images flickered around them, like holograms painted across space-time itself. They saw stars being seeded, planets constructed, rings of civilization forming across the galaxy. They saw humans not as explorers or soldiers, but as architects. Each scene showed a stage of Project Epoch, an operation that had begun near the end of the old human empire, a desperate attempt to preserve more than just survival. It was a project meant to ensure rebirth, not just of technology, not just of power, but of purpose. The galaxy had feared humanity because it built too fast, thought too deep, felt too much. No other species adapted like they did, and that made them dangerous. So the conquered conspired to kill them. But they failed, because humans didn't rely on memory alone. They had seeded their resurrection into the very planets they touched. Mars was the cradle, and at its heart was the final shard. Noor stepped into a circular chamber at the center of the forge. It wasn't made of stone or metal, but of raw memory, crystalline data formed into solid shapes, hovering mid-air. And at the center hovered the 4th shard, white, glowing, silent. It pulsed once when Noor entered, and then floated into her outstretched hand without resistance. As her fingers closed around it, the other 3 shards flared, and suddenly they merged, forming a perfect cube of light and matter. She felt every part of herself unlocked, all her fears, all her doubts, all her ancestors. "You are now keeper of the Epoch Key," Winter intoned. "Humanity's legacy is yours to awaken." Elena and Cho watched as Noor stood in the center of the forge, light swirling around her like fireflies, her body rising several inches above the ground. The cube melted into her palm, leaving no wound, no scar, only knowledge. When she lowered back to the ground, her voice was calm, steady. "They built this to give us a second chance," she said, "not to dominate, but to correct what they became. A civilization this powerful, unchecked, was always doomed. So they planted humility in the restart." Cho stepped forward. "And what does that mean for us?" "It means we don't rebuild the old empire," she said. "We build something new." Back in orbit, the warships adjusted their formations. Each vessel began transmitting across the galactic grid. The messages weren't threats, they were invitations. An open broadcast echoed across every species' territory. "We do not seek revenge. We seek remembrance. We invite those who wish to learn, to speak, to grow. Project Epoch has begun, and the stars are open again. Some worlds answered with silence, some with fear, but others with hope. 1 week later, the first alien envoy arrived at Mars. A delegation from the Rixari, a peaceful insectoid species who had never supported the Concord's betrayal, sent their chancellor to speak with Noor. He landed beneath the shadow of the floating gateway and bowed deeply. "We feared what you were," he said, "but we fear more what we've become without you." Noor offered her hand. "Then let's build together." The forge activated. Its systems, once dormant, began spinning, processing, unfolding, not to create weapons, but to build homes, terraformers, interstellar relays, sentient habitats, blueprints of a future not yet born. Humanity wasn't here to conquer the galaxy. They were here to heal it, to anchor it, to teach it how to remember. Because the greatest weapon humanity ever had wasn't its ships, or its AI, or even its impossible evolution. It was its story. And now the galaxy was ready to listen. The forge pulsed like a heart beneath the red surface of Mars, alive in ways no living thing had ever been. Its energy wrapped around reality, subtly reshaping everything: atmosphere, radiation, gravity. Not violently, gently, as if it were terraforming not just a world, but the very idea of what civilization could be. Within the vast halls of the Epoch core, Noor al-Sharif sat in silent meditation. The 4 shards had not only awakened the forge, they had changed her. Not physically. She remained flesh and blood, human in every sense. But something deeper had shifted. Her thoughts now stretched beyond the present, beyond even this era. It was as if she could sense the slow hum of the stars, the weight of time pressing down across millennia. It wasn't power she held, it was responsibility, and it was heavy. Outside, the first interstellar diplomats since the collapse stood in cautious wonder. Rixari, Kalarn, Valari dissidents. Even rogue factions of the Durrell Empire had come, unsure whether they were witnessing rebirth or reckoning. The old guard of the galactic Concord had retreated for now, licking their wounds, confused by Earth's restraint. They had expected fire. They had prepared for vengeance. Instead, humanity gave them an invitation, a chance to learn, a chance to listen. But not all were ready to accept it. High above Mars, the verdict of ash detected movement. "Contact!" one of the officers barked. "Wraith-class cloaked vessel entering Martian orbit." General Hart was already on her feet. "Trajectory?" "Converging on the forge gate. Fast." Cho appeared beside her, eyes narrowing. "Assassination?" Hart gritted her teeth. "Or sabotage. Either way, they're not here to negotiate." She hit the comms. "Noor, incoming threat. Get to cover." But Noor's voice replied calmly over the channel. "I see them." She stood at the edge of the gateway platform, gazing into the Martian sky as a sleek, black starfighter shimmered into visibility above the forge. It was shaped like a dagger, angular and silent. Conquered tech, old and advanced, coated in stealth arrays from the collapse era. The crowd of alien envoys scattered, shouting and scrambling for shelter. Noor did not move. The starfighter descended rapidly, its energy signature spiking. Inside, a single pilot sat motionless, breathing heavily. His name was Vel Aran, a Concord operative trained for only one purpose: to finish what the first betrayal had started, to end humanity. He activated the kill sequence. A gravity imploder was armed beneath his ship, enough to create a small black hole, enough to obliterate the forge and anything within 50 kilometers. But before his ship could release its payload, every warship in the human fleet turned at once. 12 ancient leviathans locked onto him, silently, precisely. The vigilant Winter moved first. It didn't fire a weapon. Instead, it spoke. "You are not the future." In an instant, the Wraith-class fighter was caught in a stasis net, a suspension field designed in the final years before the collapse, capable of freezing molecular movement. The ship stopped moving. Time inside it stopped. Vel Aaron would remain alive, trapped in the same moment of intent for eternity, a fossil of hatred, a relic of the last war. The forge gates reopened moments later, and the envoys slowly returned, their fear slowly replaced by awe. If humanity had wanted to, they could have destroyed a dozen fleets that day. Instead, they showed restraint. That alone shook the foundations of galactic politics. But Noor knew it wasn't enough to just be merciful. Humanity had to be clear. On the fifth day, Noor stood at the summit of the forge, where the light was brightest, the energy strongest. Broadcast towers, grown from the Martian soil by the forge's design, now reached into orbit, pulsing with a low harmonic wave that could travel across thousands of light years. Today, Noor would speak not just for Earth, not just for her warships, but for the memory of a species long buried under betrayal and time. She began, "We are human. You tried to forget us. You tried to erase us from your records, from your history, from your minds. You burned our colonies. You shattered our AI. You poisoned our skies with viruses and turned our creations against us. And still, we returned. Because we are not what you made us out to be. We are not vengeance. We are not conquest. We are survivors." She paused, letting the words ripple through the fabric of space. "We have awakened the forge not to rebuild an empire, but to offer a path forward. This technology will not be hoarded. It will be shared. For those who seek war, you will find none here. For those who seek peace, come, learn, grow with us. But never again will we be forgotten." The response was not immediate. It came over the course of weeks, tentative messages from neutral systems, curious requests from independent traders, explorers, scholars, even some defectors from the Concord itself, all seeking answers, seeking understanding, and humanity gave it to them. Bit by bit, Project Epic became something greater than a memory. It became a movement. Forge nodes were established on Jupiter's moons, on Earth's orbit, even on Rixari diplomatic stations. Terraforming tools were released to cooperative worlds. An open archive was launched, detailing everything known about the collapse and naming those who had orchestrated it, not out of spite, but for transparency. Truth was the weapon now, and it was sharper than any plasma blade. Inside the vigilant winter, Cho watched as the galaxy shifted, ever so slightly. The Conquered hadn't retaliated. Not yet. But it was weakening. Their propaganda couldn't hold up against footage of human ships saving Rixari colonies from a reactor crisis. They couldn't silence broadcasts of Noor healing a poisoned ocean on the Zarn homeworld using forge-grown microbial colonies. And when a Valeri child, orphaned by internal war, was adopted into the human-led Mars Accord, everything changed. Because no one feared a warmonger who raised children. They respected a civilization willing to rewrite its legacy. Months passed. The warships remained in orbit. Watchers, protectors, reminders of the past. They were rarely used. They didn't need to be. Most of their power was symbolic now, and that made them more dangerous than any weapon. Inside the forge, Noor stood over the final construct, a seed ship, designed to carry the story of Earth to the farthest stars. Not to colonize, but to connect. A mobile archive, a traveling embassy, a storyteller. She would not be aboard. That task would belong to others. She had done her part. Now she turned to Winter one final time. "Are they ready?" she asked. "Not all," the AI replied. "But some are, and more will be. Will we fall again? That depends on what you build, and what you teach them to remember." She nodded, and walked away from the core. Earth, once categorized as primitive, now led the greatest diplomatic and technological movement in the galaxy. Not by dominance, by memory. And across the stars, species spoke of the return not with dread, but with curiosity, with wonder. They told their children, "There was a time the humans disappeared, and we thought we were safe. But now they've returned, and we are safer because of it." In the end, humanity's greatest legacy wasn't warships that defied physics. It wasn't the Shard. It wasn't even the Forge. It was the courage to rise from betrayal and choose something better. A civilization that had every reason to hate the galaxy, chose to heal it instead. And that changed everything.